Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. Steven here with Team Euphoric, and this is day 5 of the 80 Days to Your Dream Body. Today's protein source is going to be pork spare ribs, and today is going to be an active recovery day. So instead of a workout, I'm going to be taking you through a full body stretching routine. Now let's get started. Next, we are going to move on to the myofascial stretching routine, and we're going to do this in two sections. We're going to start from the core and work our way down. So we're going to do the lower body first, and then we are going to work on the upper body. For the lower body, we're going to do everything in opposites. So we're going to do the trunk flexors, then we're going to do the trunk extensors, hip flexors, hip extensors, knee extensors, knee flexors. So for the first one that we're going to do is the myofascial stretching exercise for the psoas major. For this one, you are going to get into the bottom position of a lunge. So we're going to be in a half kneeling position. And then I'm going to take you through it the first time, very specifically. And then the next time I want to see if you could get into it right away. Well, what we want to do, the psoas major, it is responsible at the hip for flexion, adduction, and lateral rotation. So we want to reverse those. First, we are going to go into a abduction by taking the non-working leg, moving it out to the side, and we're going to just shift over. We're going to go into medial rotation by bringing the ankle outside and push out with the ankle. We're going to go into extension by driving the hip forward. Psoas is responsible for anteversion. We're going to go into retroversion by tucking the pelvis underneath us. At the spine, it is responsible for ipsilateral rotation. So we are going to do contralateral rotation by bending away, and contralateral rotation. So we are going to do ipsilateral rotation by rotating toward the side that we're stretching. We're going to keep the chin tucked in, crown of the head up, eyes looking down at the floor to put the dura mater under tension with the arms. We're doing maximum extension of elbow and wrist, maximum external rotation, and we are going to hold this for 30 seconds. And now we are going to switch sides. Same thing. So we're going into abduction, medial rotation, extension, retroversion, flat spine, flat thoracic, chin tucked in, crown of head up, eyes looking down. We are going into contralateral bending by bending away from the side we're stretching, ipsilateral rotation, and 30 seconds. If you guys have trouble remembering all of these, if you look on my Saturday morning stretch or just my mobilizations and stretches playlist, I do have a video of this and I go over it step by step and I freeze frame each individual action that you should be doing. So if you need a little bit more assistance, pause the video and go check out that video. And we are going to switch sides again. For the myofascial stretching, we do 2 or 3 total for 30 seconds on each side. So let me just restart the clock for 30. And let's switch sides. You want to be going all over these. These shouldn't feel easy. If it feels easy, you're probably not doing it right. You're probably letting go of some slack somewhere. I'm sweating more doing this than I do when I train. So if you're not sweating by now, you're probably not doing it right. Or you might just be more conditioned than I am. We got one more each side. And let's switch sides. Last one. And let's slowly come out of it. That was the myofascial stretching exercise for the psoas major. Next, we are going to do the myofascial stretching exercise for the longissimus, specifically the caudal fibers, so the inferior fibers. For this one, we want to be in a seated position. You are going to open up your legs. You are going to go maximum extension of elbows and wrists, maximum external rotation, chin tucked in, crown of the head up, eyes looking down. And then at the lumbar spine, you want to try and create as much of a C-shaped curve. So imagine that your belly button, you are trying to shoot it out behind you as far as you can. And we've got 30 seconds starting now. At the ankles too, we are going into dorsiflexion by pointing the toes toward us, and eversion by pointing the soles away from us. But really focus on rounding the spine as much as you can. So try and get that belly button as far back. And let's just take a little bit of a rest. So for this one, because it is a unilateral, or because this is a bilateral exercise, we are going to be taking mini breaks after each set of 30, about 10-15 seconds. Normally, we would just go right back into the other ones, but for the bilateral exercises, we take mini breaks at the end of each. And let's get back into it, 30 seconds. And relax. We're going to take a short little break before doing the final set. We've got about 10 seconds left to rest. If you guys have any questions about the exercises, just drop a comment down in the comment section. Let me know what your questions are, and I'll be able to answer you. But let's go ahead and do the final one. And relax. That covers it for the myofascial stretching exercise for the longissimus. Next, we've done the front, we did the back, we're going back to the front again. Now we're moving down to the hip, and we are going to do another hip flexor stretch. So even though we already did the psoas major, another muscle that is responsible for hip flexion is the rectus femoris. So right now we are going to do the myofascial stretching exercise for the rectus femoris. We are going to, for this one, get into a half kneeling position. And I'm going to do this one from, actually, I'll do this one from the side. That way you guys could see exactly what I'm doing. I'm going to be training my right side first. So because I'm doing my right side, my left foot is going to be forward. Then from this position right over here, what I want to do is grab a hold of my ankle. And you want to try and drive your heel toward your butt, make it touch the midline. We also want to go into retroversion of the pelvis, so you're going to tuck underneath you. Go into extension by shifting your hips forward. At the spine, we're going to go neutral spine, so flat lumbar, flat thoracic, chin tucked in, crown of the head up, eyes looking down to put the dura mater under tension. And with the arm, we're going to go into maximum extension of elbow and wrist, maximum external rotation, and drive the hand so that the bicep is in line with the ear. And we've got 30 seconds. And we're going to go right into the other side. Go ahead, grab the ankle, bring it toward the butt, go toward the midline, retroversion of pelvis, extension, and we've got 30 seconds. I also have this one as a standalone video, so if you do need a little bit more assistance, pause the video and go check out rectus femoris myofascial stretching for a more detailed explanation of how to perform it. And other side. You may have to search quad stretch because when I initially uploaded it, I believe that more people were searching quad stretch than rectus femoris, so I believe I titled it quad stretch. But that is also in my Saturday playlist. And again, on the other side for 30. And switch. Thirty seconds. Really focus on that retroversion of the pelvis. You're going to get a lot more if you tuck your butt underneath you as opposed to just bringing the heel to the butt. But again, the primary action is driving that heel toward the butt and across the midline. Sorry, not across the midline, but across to the midline. So you don't have to go across it. We got one more on each side. Thirty seconds. And we got one more on the opposite side before we move on to the next. So we've got 30 seconds starting now. And relax. So now that we just did a hip flexor stretch, we are going to do a hip extensor stretch. And we are going to be doing the myofascial stretching exercise for the gluteus maximus muscle. For this one, we are going to be in a supine position. So we are going to be laying down on our backs. And what we want to do with the non-working leg, you are going to go into slight adduction by going toward the midline and pseudo inversion. So you're going into dorsiflexion and inversion. And we want to go into medial rotation as well. Then with the working leg, because the gluteus maximus is responsible for extension, abduction, and lateral rotation, we are going to do the opposite. So we are going to go into flexion, and then to do adduction and medial rotation, with the same arm of the side we're stretching, we're going to go ahead and grab onto the lateral arch of the foot. With the opposite arm, we are going to pull the knee across. That's going to bring us into adduction and medial rotation. And we are going to hold that for 30 seconds. And remember, with the opposite leg, slight adduction, and then we've got medial rotation, pseudo inversion by going into dorsiflexion and inversion. And we're going to switch sides. Just pause that. Slight adduction, medial rotation, pseudo inversion. Grab the lateral arch, and with the opposite arm of the leg that's being worked, you are going to pull it across. And we got 30 seconds. And come out of it. I'm going to do the opposite side. We got 30 seconds. One other thing that you can do to enhance the effects of the stretch is lateral version of the pelvis. So on the side that's being worked, you can imagine that you're driving that hip down and away from you, and then the opposite side, you are bringing it toward your skull. And that's just going to intensify the stretch a little bit. And we're going to come out of it. Other side. And we have one more on each side. Starting now. This is also a terrific stretch for anybody who has any type of tendonitis in the tensor fasciae lati muscle. And I'm not sure if you heard that because the timer went off just as I was saying that. But if you have tendonitis in the tensor fasciae lati muscle, this is also a terrific stretch. And 30 seconds. Whoops, 30 seconds. Last one. And now we're going to take a little break. Since we just did the hip extensors, we're going to move down now. So now we're going to move down to the knee. At the knee, we are going to do the front of the knee. So we are going to be stretching the knee extensors. That's going to be the quadriceps group. Most people are going to be really tight in the vastus lateralis. So that is going to be the stretch that we are going to be focusing on first. For this one right over here, what you would want to do is get into a prone position. So you're laying down on your stomach. And then you would want to go ahead and grab a hold of your ankle with the opposite arm, and you're going to bring it across the midline. And then with the side that you were stretching, that arm is going to go into full flexion so that it's by your ear. And you are going to go into lateral rotation as much as possible. And we are going to start right now. And now we're going to do the other side. So you are going to Go ahead, grab a hold of your ankle, cross the midline, drive it toward the butt, and then with the arm, maximum extension of elbow and wrist, maximum external rotation, and your ear is down to the ground. And we're going to switch sides. Starting now, 30 seconds. In case you guys see my head hovering off the ground, it's because I have an earpiece so I could talk to you guys. And if I let my ear touch the ground, you guys are not going to be able to hear me because it's going to get all muffled. Switch sides. On this side, however, I do not have that problem because I don't have an earpiece on this side. 30 seconds. I believe that was 2 passes. We've got 1 more on each side. Starting now. After those 4 intense training sessions that you guys did, this is a nice little treat. I know that there's no way I'd be able to train back today because my biceps are pretty sore from yesterday. So this is a much needed active recovery day. Go! And slowly come out of it. We got 1 more. Starting now. And come out of it. All right, now that we ended up doing the myofascial stretching exercise for the vastus medialis, which is a knee extensor, it's time to get started on the knee flexors. So for the knee flexors, we are going to be doing the biceps femoris. And for the biceps femoris, we are going to be in a seated position. And then what we want to do for this one right over here is the non-working leg. We're going to flex it to 90 degrees at the knee. We're going to go into dorsiflexion, E version. So you're pointing the toes toward your head and then away from you. You're going to drive your knee down toward the ground. And then because the hamstrings are responsible for knee extension, all we're doing for this one is we are going into dorsiflexion by pointing the toes toward us with the working leg. Pseudo inversion. So we're going into dorsiflexion inversion. Then we want to go into medial rotation. And because we're doing the biceps femoris, which is the most lateral, we're going to go medial to get a little bit more tension. And then at the pelvis, we want to go onto our sit bones. The sit bones, that is the ischial tuberosity where the hamstrings attach. So we're going to get extra myofascial tension along the backside of the leg. And then from this position right over here, all we are going to do, maintain a neutral spine, chin tucked in, crown of head up, eyes looking down, slightly go forward with the belly. And then we're going to take the arms out, maximum extension elbow wrist, maximum external rotation, and we are going to start right now. All right, now let's come out of it. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. Bend the knee, dorsiflexion eversion, drop the knee down to the ground, slight adduction, dorsiflexion, inversion, medial rotation, roll onto your sit bones, and we've got 30 seconds starting now. And we're going to switch sides. I'm not going to say anything this time. I want to see if you guys could remember it by yourselves. My goal with all of my clients and patients is that when they leave me, they no longer need me. And that is my goal for you guys. I want you guys to eventually not need to come to my channel. I want you guys to just know this stuff. That way you guys could come up with your own custom programs and stretching routines. And switch sides. Starting now, 30 seconds. And relax, switch sides. I don't know you guys, but I am really sweaty and really shaky right now. If you guys are neither, you guys need to intensify these stretches a bit. 30 seconds, starting now. Now we're going to switch sides. This is the last one for the lower body portion. Starting now. And let's come out of it. And that concludes the lower body portion of the myofascial stretching exercise routine. Next, we are going to be performing the upper body myofascial stretching routine. And the principle is going to be the same as the lower body. We're going to do everything in opposites. So first, we are going to do the pecs. We're going to do the superficial fibers of the pectoralis major. Then we are going to do the latissimus dorsi muscle. We're then going to move on to the anterior deltoid. We're then going to move on to the posterior deltoid. Then we're going to do the long head of the biceps brachii, and then finish off with the long head of the triceps brachii. So if you've noticed, we are going medial to lateral, so proximal to distal. And for the first one, myofascial stretching exercise for the pec major, we are going to be in a prone position. So you are going to be laying down onto your stomach. And then for this one right over here, what you would want to do is you are going to take the arm that you are working with, bring it out to the side, and you want to get your arm to the level of the glenohumeral angle. If you're not sure where that is, it's going to be anywhere from 90 to 135 degrees. It's going to vary for each individual, but it's where when you move your humerus, if it gets stuck at the glenoid, then what's going to happen is that is the glenohumeral angle. So for me, and for a lot of people, when your hand is at the level of your forehead, that's roughly going to be the level of the glenohumeral angle for most people. But what we're doing is we want to pin the shoulder down toward the ground. Maximum extension of elbow and wrist. We're going to go into lateral rotation. Then what we want to do is at the knees, we are going to flex the knees. The reason we're flexing the knees is because the pectoralis major inserts into the fibers of the rectus abdominis, and the rectus abdominis attaches into the pubic symphysis, which is part of the ilium. And because it attaches to the pubic symphysis, when we flex our knees, we're going to create tension on the rectus femoris, which attaches to the anterior inferior iliac spine, which is at the bottom end of the pelvis. So we're going to create greater myofascial tension on the superficial fibers of the pectoralis major. So again, glenohumeral angle, pin the shoulder down, extension elbow and wrist, maximum external rotation, flex the knees, dorsiflexion, eversion, and then you're going to put the ear of the side that you're stretching onto the floor with opposite arm. You're going to imagine you're getting ready to do a push-up, and you're just going to shift your weight over onto the opposite side. And we are going to start 30 seconds now. If you have really tight biceps, you'll probably also feel this a lot in your biceps.
Go!
And let's come out of it. And now we're just going to switch sides. So pin that shoulder down, extension of elbow and wrist, maximum external rotation, ear down to the ground. And with the opposite arm, you're going to roll over onto your shoulder.
Go!
And let's switch sides. Starting now. Make sure that shoulder remains pinned down. Don't let that shoulder leave.
Go!
And switch sides. And starting now. If you guys have trouble remembering this one, I also have another video on my channel dedicated to it. Just search pec stretch or go to my Saturday morning stretch series playlist or my mobilizations and stretches, and it'll be in there. I have a very detailed step-by-step video where I freeze frame at every single cue. That way you guys know exactly what to do. But we're going to switch sides. We got one more on each. And we are going to get started right now.
Go!
We got one more. 30 seconds, starting right now. and come out of it and relax. And that was it for the pec stretch. So now that we did the front, we're going to do the back and we're going to move on to our latissimus dorsi muscle. For the latissimus dorsi, we are going to be in a half kneeling position. So imagine that you are in the bottom position of a lunge. Whichever knee is on the floor, that is going to be the side that we are stretching. So for me, I'm going to be placing my right knee on the floor. So I'm going to be stretching my right latissimus dorsi muscle. What we're doing for this one is we want to go into because the latissimus dorsi is responsible for extension, medial rotation, adduction. We are going to do the opposite. So we're going to go into flexion, lateral rotation, and abduction by reaching across. And then with the opposite arm, we are going to pull. We are going to rotate away from the side that we're stretching, we're going to side bend away from the side that we're stretching. So we're doing a contralateral bend of the spine, ipsilateral rotation by rotating toward the side that we're stretching. And we're going to hold that for 30 seconds starting now. And slowly come out of it. Switch sides. So you're going to bring the opposite knee down. Flexion, lateral rotation, abduction. And then with the opposite arm, pull across. 30 seconds starting now. And don't forget, you got the contralateral side bend, ipsilateral rotation. And slowly come out of it. We'll do the opposite side. So just switch real quick. 30 seconds starting now. Slowly come out of it. And we're going to do the opposite side. 30 seconds starting now. How are you guys feeling? You guys have any comments or criticisms, or if you love what you guys are doing right now, drop it down in the comment section. Let me know. Switch sides. Also, if you prefer other stretching methods, this one is specifically a myofascial stretching routine, but if you guys would prefer to do something like PNF stretching, ballistic stretching, or other types of dynamic stretching, I'd be more than down to do that. Me personally, though, I just really love the myofascial stretching. 30 seconds starting now. And come out of it. We got one more on the opposite side before we're done with this one. 30 seconds starting now. Okay, let's come out of it. And that concludes the myofascial stretching exercise for the latissimus dorsi. Now we just did the back. We're going to come more to the front and we are going to go more distal. We're going to work our way down to the shoulder. At the shoulder, we're going to do the anterior deltoid. For the anterior deltoid, it is responsible for flexion, medial rotation, and abduction. So we are going to do the opposite. We're going to go into extension, lateral rotation, and using the opposite arm, we are going to pull it across to induce adduction. The other thing with regard to this one is to get a nice pre-stretch on the anterior deltoid. We want to go into retraction of the scapula. So your shoulder blades, you really want to squeeze them together and you want to bring the inferior angle of the scapula down toward the opposite butt cheek. So you're going into scapular retraction and depression. Imagine just, and then you could also just imagine that you're lifting your chest up as you squeeze your shoulder blades together. But again, we've got extension, lateral rotation, induce adduction with the opposite arm. And then for a greater stretch, what we are going to do is we are going to go into lateral bend of, we're going to go into a contralateral side bend of the cervical spine to create a little bit more myofascial tension on the anterior surface of the shoulder joint. And then we are going to go into ipsilateral rotation by looking toward the side that we're stretching. We've got 30 seconds starting now. With this one, it is a very active stretch. So you're not just pulling your arm across, but you are actively going into extension and lateral rotation. So don't start to slack off and just pull the arm across. You really want to focus on that extension and lateral rotation. Okay, now we're going to do the opposite side. 30 seconds. So again, stick out that chest, retraction of the scapula, depression of the scapula. We've got extension, lateral rotation, induce the adduction, and we could also add retropulsion of the humerus by driving the arm down. So imagine you're trying to bring your arm down into the floor. Starting now. Contralateral side bend at the cervical spine, ipsilateral rotation. So we're bending the neck away from the side that we're stretching and rotating toward the side that we're stretching. And now we're going to switch sides. 30 seconds, starting now. So again, you're sticking the chest up. You got retraction of the scapula, depression of the scapula, retropulsion of the humerus by driving the hand and palm down toward the floor, maximum extension and external rotation of the working limb. And then we are pulling the arm across to induce an adduction. At the cervical spine, contralateral side bend by bending away, ipsilateral rotation by looking toward the side that we're stretching. Move to the other side. 30 seconds starting now. And comment down below of which of the stretches you've done so far that have been your favorite. My least favorite is probably the rectus femoris because that's the one that I need the most. And we've got one more each side. 30 seconds starting now. The other thing that I forgot to mention is at the pelvis, because the anterior deltoid is in the front, we can go into anteversion. If we go into anteversion, that will create tension on the rectus abdominis, which will create tension on the superficial fibers of the pec, and the pec inserts into the humerus. So we'll get a little extra myofascial tension that way. But last one, 30 seconds starting now. So anti-version, stick the chest out, retract those shoulder blades, bring them down, retropulsion of the humerus by driving your palm down toward the floor, maximum extension and lateral rotation of the humerus, pull the arm across to induce an adduction at the cervical spine, contralateral side bend by bending away from the side that we're stretching, ipsilateral rotation by looking toward the side we're stretching. And that covers it for the anterior deltoid. Now that we did the front, we are going to move on to the back and we're going to do the opposite. We are going to do the posterior deltoid. For the posterior deltoid, what we are going to do is pretty much the opposite. The posterior deltoid is responsible for extension and lateral rotation, also abduction. So we are going to go into flexion, medial rotation, and induce an adduction by driving the arm across. Everything else, though, is the exact same. Actually, there is one difference. For this one right over here, because we are focusing on the posterior surface, we want to go into retroversion. So for this one, we could sit down and tuck the pelvis underneath us to create greater myofascial tension on the thoracolumbar fascia, which attaches to the latissimus dorsi, which attaches to the humerus. So again, we are just going into flexion, medial rotation, inducing adduction, and we are going into antipulsion by driving the palm down toward the floor in front of us. And then for this one, we are doing a side bend away from the side that we are stretching, so contralateral side bend. And for this one, we are doing a contralateral rotation, so we are looking away from the side that we're stretching. And 30 seconds starting now. So again, retroversion of pelvis, you're sitting down on your butt, neutral spine, we got flexion, medial rotation, adduction at the humerus, protraction of the scapula. So imagine that you are trying to separate your shoulder blades as much as possible. Last one we were retracting. This one we are protracting. And antipulsion of the humerus by driving the palm down into the floor. Slowly come out of it. And 30 seconds on the opposite side starting now. So we're sitting down. We've got retroversion of the pelvis, protraction of the scapula, flexion, medial rotation, and adduction by pulling the arm across. We got antipulsion of the humerus by driving the palm down toward the floor, contralateral side bend of the cervical spine by bending away, and contralateral rotation by rotating the cervical spine away from the side that we're stretching. Okay. Switch sides, 30 seconds, starting now. If these stretches feel really easy, it means one of two things. It either means, relax, we're going to switch sides. It either means that you are not doing it right because they should be very difficult, or if you are doing it right, it just means that you don't need this stretch. So for me, I barely feel this one at all because my shoulders, the posterior deltoid, it's not a very tight muscle. And for most people, it's not really tight. So this one, you should definitely feel it less for most people than you did the anterior deltoid. The anterior deltoid, most people are going to be in a medially rotated position. So for most people, they're going to feel it a lot more in the anterior deltoid than posterior. But we are going to go ahead and go on to the other side, 30 seconds starting now. We got retroversion of the pelvis, protraction of the scapula, antipulsion of the humerus by driving the palm down toward the floor, flexion, medial rotation, and adduction of the humerus. And then we are pulling across to induce an adduction at the cervical spine, contralateral side bend by bending away from the side that we're stretching, and contralateral rotation by rotating the cervical spine away from the side we're stretching. We've got one more on each side. 30 seconds starting now. Comment down below if you actually feel this stretch. I'm curious because For most people, this isn't really a necessary stretch. But since we are doing a full body stretch, it is good just to work in opposites. And for any military people out there, a lot of people that are in the military, because of the military posture that exists, they may feel this one a little bit more than the general population. We're going to switch side, and we've got 30 seconds starting now. And I lost track, but I believe this is the third pass. It's either the second or the third. I'm pretty sure it's the third.
Go.
And relax. Actually, I think that was the second. We'll do one more just in case. Just in case. 30 seconds starting now.
Go.
And last one. 30 seconds starting now. So one final recap. We got retroversion of the pelvis, we've got protraction of the scapula, antepulsion of the humerus, flexion, medial rotation, and adduction of the humerus. And we've got a contralateral side bend and contralateral rotation of the cervical spine.
Go.
Okay. And that concludes the myofascial stretching exercise for the posterior deltoid. Now that we did the back, we're going to come back to the front and we're going to move more distal. We are going to do the long head of the biceps brachii. For the long head of the biceps brachii, I'm going to put myself in a 45-degree angle for this one. That way you guys can get a slightly better idea of what exactly I'm doing. And that looks like it's about 45-ish. This one, we are going to be in a seated position. For the biceps brachii, the long head is the only bicep muscle that actually crosses the shoulder. The short head just crosses the elbow. So because it crosses the front of the shoulder, it is responsible for flexion. So we are going to go into extension. And then it is also responsible for elbow flexion. So we are going to go into extension. And it is responsible for supination. So we are going to go into pronation. For a lot of people, that's going to be a little bit tricky. You want to do lateral rotation at the shoulder, medial rotation at the forearm. And then what we want to do to get a nice pre-stretch on the anterior surface of the glenohumeral joint is we want to stick the chest out. So we are going to imagine that you are just like really trying to arch your back. So retract your shoulder blades, depress the scapula. And then again, we are going into lateral rotation of the shoulders. You want to try and bring your hands toward one another. And then your palms facing the ceiling. So you want to try and keep that retraction the entire time. So you're really opening up the chest and really focus on that lateral rotation. But 30 seconds starting now. One thing with this exercise is we are going to be performing it as a bilateral exercise. This also can be performed ipsilaterally. If you wanted to get more tension on the right and focus just on the right, you would do a contralateral side bend, ipsilateral rotation, and then you would focus just on the right. And you would do the opposite for the left side. And we're going to relax a little bit. Since we're doing it as a bilateral exercise, we are going to take a little bit of a break in between each set. So we're going to take about 10-15 seconds before getting into it again. And right now, we've got 30 seconds. So again, lateral rotation, pronation. And then for this one thing that I forgot to mention is we are creating a varus force at the elbows. So you want to imagine when you're in this position you want to imagine that you're driving your elbows out and away from your body. But we're going to start 30 seconds right now. So again, you got retraction of the scapula, depression of the scapula, lateral rotation of the humerus, pronation of the forearms, and a varus force at the elbow. So imagine that you are pushing your elbows out and away from your body. And if you wanted to do this ipsilaterally on the left side, you would do a contralateral side bend by bending your neck to the right, and ipsilateral rotation by looking toward your left side. But that was 30 seconds, so we're going to just take a quick 10-15-second break, shake out the wrists. For some people, this could be a little uncomfortable on the wrists. I know that for myself, the very first time that I did it, it wasn't very pleasant on the wrists being in that position. It's not ideal. If you want, you can do a supinated wrist as opposed to pronated. You're not going to get quite as much of a stretch, but only resort to that if it's really uncomfortable. If it's really uncomfortable, another modification is you could do it on your fists as opposed to going into supination, because if you do it on a closed fist, you're still going to get that but keep that pronation of the forearm. But last one, we've got 30 seconds starting now. Okay, so also dorsiflexion and eversion of the feet. But yeah, we are sticking the chest out, so antepulsion of the manubrium, retraction of the scapula, depression of the scapula, maximum lateral rotation of the humerus, pronation of the forearms, and varus force at the elbows by driving the elbows out and away from your body.
Go.
And slowly come out of it. And that concludes the myofascial stretching exercise for the biceps brachii. Now that we did the front, we are going to do the back, and we are going to do the long head of the triceps brachii. For this one right over here, the very first set, I am going to do it facing away from you guys. That way you can see exactly what I'm doing. But essentially, for this one, what we want to do is we are going to sit down onto our calves. We are going to bring our arm, the triceps brachii, specifically the long head, it crosses the shoulder and it's responsible for extension. So we're going to go into flexion, and it extends the elbow. So we are going to flex the elbow as much as we can. And then with the opposite arm, we are going to pull it across, and we are also going to keep it, we're going to use the opposite arm to keep it into flexion. And we are actively imagining that we are pushing our elbow up toward the sky. So when we are in this push position right over here, imagine that you're driving the elbow upward. And because we are doing the long head of the triceps brachii, when the hand is behind us, we are in this neutral position. We're not going into supination. We're not going into pronation. We want a nice neutral position. But we're going to do 30 seconds starting right now. And now we're going to come out of it, and we're going to do the opposite. 30 seconds, starting right now. So flexion at both the shoulder and the elbow, neutral grip. Use the opposite arm to induce a little bit more flexion and point the elbow up toward the sky. So you are actively, imagine that somebody's pulling on your arm up toward the sky. You're not just pushing down. You want to make sure that you're going up toward the sky. And relax. Since you guys have seen it, I'm going to come back over here again. And we've got 2 more passes each side, 30 seconds, starting right now. For this one, the reason we're sitting down onto our calves is just to create that retroversion of the pelvis. Because again, at the pelvis, we've got the thoracolumbar fascia that attaches to it. And the thoracolumbar fascia connects to the latissimus dorsi. The latissimus dorsi connects to the humerus, and the humerus where the long head of the triceps brachii and well all of the triceps muscle attached to. So we're going to create more myofascial tension. We have 1.5 more sets. 30 seconds starting right now. Doing this right after doing the latissimus dorsi stretch is a great idea too, because there's a lot of overlap, but it makes getting into this one a lot easier. Because if we go right into this one without doing the lats first, you won't be able to get quite as deep. Whereas when we do we're going to rest a little bit, switch sides. When we do the latissimus dorsi first, because we have that similar hand position, it makes it a lot easier to get deeper into this stretch after doing the latissimus dorsi. But we've got one more each side. 30 seconds starting now. Not sure if you guys heard that, but excuse me.
Go.
And one final pass. 30 seconds starting now. How are you guys enjoying this 80 days to your dream body so far? Did you guys like the workouts? Comment below. Let me know which workout was your favorite, which exercise was your favorite, and which stretch was your favorite. Also, which meal was your favorite?
Go.
And relax. All right. Thank you very much for joining me. And that concludes day 5 of the 80 days to your dream body. I'll see you again tomorrow. Thanks for sticking around until the end of the video. Be sure to like, share, and leave a comment as it'll help the algorithm. And if you enjoyed the content, show your support by subscribing to the channel by clicking on the icon in the bottom right corner. And if you really want to show your support, then consider becoming a member by clicking on the icon in the bottom left corner. These new high-quality videos aren't cheap to edit, and the $5 membership will really help with the video editing budget. You'll also get access to a ton of exclusive perks like early access to videos and this program design lecture playlist in the top right-hand corner. And if you want to learn how to do a one-armed pull-up, then check out the playlist on the top left corner.